Okay, traders, now we're going to talk about escaping the boom and bust cycle. We're going to be talking about the psychology behind the boom and bust cycle and what it is specifically you can do to break out of it. Because like we talked about in the previous video, your emotional state has a huge impact on the decisions you make, how many decisions, when you make those decisions, why you make those decisions. So if you get your mindset right and in the best possible state, you can actually break out the boom and bust cycle. And I've helped many traders do this in the 12-week program, one-on-one coaching. I'm going to share with you the principles, the psychology behind escaping the boom and bust cycle in today's video. Now, if you're getting a lot of value from the Trading Psychology Mastery series, please share the playlist link, which is in the description, with your trading community. Let's get these ideas out there. And also, if you haven't already done the Trading Psychology Archetype Quiz, that's also the link in the description. Go in and do that straight after this video. That's an absolute game changer. It's going to tell you which of the 4 trading mindsets you have. It's also going to give you a personalized report on what exactly you should do to go from where you currently are to consistently profitable, consistently paid by the markets. That's completely free also. So let's get into it. Okay, now in this video, we're going to be talking about how you can go from a trader whose results look something like this. This is time. This is how much the trader makes. Let's say this is 1 year of time. Let's say this is the goal of $100,000 in 1 year. And the trader looks something like this, right? They start off their journey and maybe they do quite well. They make $10,000 in the first month and they're extremely excited. They're over the moon. And then we have to have a negative component to this, negative 10,000. And then they're thinking, you know what? I'm so good. And then they start thinking they're invincible in the market. They start to take a few losses. And then they really start to take a few losses and they go into the negative. And they're so far into the negative, they're looking at their brokerage account. It's $10,000 in the hole. And they're thinking, shit, I need to get back to really just taking the highest quality setups in my trading plan. And they start to do pretty well again. They get back to break even and maybe even break out to doing that $10,000 mark again. And then the same cycle repeats. And by this point, the trader's labeling their actions self-sabotage, but it's not really self-sabotage. There's a very specific reason and a very specific thing that's happening in the psychology that is leading them to then start taking more losses and then go through what is called the boom and bust cycle. And guess what? At the end of the year, guess what they have to show for it? Absolutely nothing. They've made $0. That's a good result for most traders. You know, most traders end up very far in the pit, you know, negative 10, negative 20,000, even more. I've seen and I've worked with some clients who are much further down into that pit, 6 figures in drawdown in their brokerage account. Because what happens is they get to this point in the journey where they've invested so much and they're so deep in a drawdown, and then they lose control. They spiral out of control. They revenge trade, and then they beat themselves up. They're so frustrated with their abilities, and they're thinking, I've spent 9 months trading, I'm down $10,000, you know, and I see people on social media doing very well, making all this amount of money, and flexing the Lambos and the cars, and I can't do that, and they spiral out through revenge trading. And we're going to be talking about this spiraling process later in the series, but today we're specifically talking about the boom and bust cycle. How can you go from that to this? A trader who consistently extracts money from the market, time, 1 year, dollar, 100K. It's a nice round goal. A trader who consistently is building profits throughout the year. Not without drawdown, because that's unrealistic. But at the end of the larger sample space over the year, they've hit that financial goal that they want to hit. And again, these drawdowns, these drawbacks, these drawdowns here are a necessary part of the game. As a trader, because you're trading a probability model, you need to learn how to take 1 step back before you take 2 steps forward. That's really the game. It's a staggered game of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 forward, 1 back, etc., etc. And it may not look so linear. It can sometimes look a little bit haywired. There's a really great illustration by the guy who writes Wait But Why, the blog post, and he has I might be butchering the name, but he has a graph where he encompasses the journey of what success looks like, and it's very much not a linear path, it's not an exponential path, but it's quite messy in the middle. And I may not even be attributing the right guy, but you guys probably know what I'm talking about. And really, the trading journey looks something like that. But if you have a proven edge, and this is where let's go backtrack over the last few videos we've talked about. If you have a proven edge, a mechanical trading plan, and you're adhering to that trading plan, the middle part, irrespective of how messy it looks, it doesn't really matter how messy it looks. As long as you go back to your mechanical trading plan that has a profitable edge, you know you'll end up at a profitable state by the end of the year. Okay? I just wanted to share that little analogy drawing so I can paint a picture for the importance of the lectures, the lessons I'm going to share in this video. So, what is the boom and bust cycle? What is it? And why is it a function of your psychology? So let's go into that. The boom and bust cycle, like we've explained here, is, and let's tie in the concepts we talked about in this series already, the boom and bust cycle starts when the trader takes a few wins and they go into a state of pride. Remember, as a trader, you can be in two states. You can be in a state of pride, self-exaggeration, or shame, self-minimization. Shame, pride. When you're in a state of pride, you have what is called an narcissistic compensation for pride. You puff yourself up, you think you're better than the market, and you narcissistically force your agenda and your ideas onto the market. You have this narcissistic compensation. Now think about it. If the market's there and the market's not ready to be traded, but you're in this proud, narcissistic, ego trip state where you feel invincible and you start talking down to the market and you think in your own mind that you can predict what's going to happen next, and in your mind you're saying the market's going to go to this price over this time, and you force that idea onto the market, what's going to happen? If the market's not ready to do that, you're going to lose money. So when traders take a few wins and they go into this state of self-exaggeration and pride, they then start projecting low-quality setups onto the market, and guess what happens? This is the boom, and then they go into the bust cycle because they're self-exaggerating, they're minimizing the risk in the market, they're forcing low-quality setups into the market's not ready for, and then they start taking losses. And they go so far into the bust cycle here because they've taken loss. They go so far into the bust cycle in this state of shame, they've been challenged so much that they realize, you know what, shit, they're laying awake in bed one night, having a sleepless night, and they're thinking to themselves, what have I done? Tomorrow I'm going to wake up, and tomorrow I'm going to go back to the drawing board. I'm only going to do what works. I'm only going to stick to the highest quality setups in my trading plan. They've been so challenged mentally and physically and intellectually that they go back to what is priority, the highest quality setups, and they only start taking high quality setups that are part of their process and part of their trading plan. And guess what? Because as a result, they then start taking wins. Now, of course, there may be some small drawdowns in that process, one step back, two step forward. But just to illustrate my point, they start taking wins, and that's the boom part of the cycle. And then guess what happens? If a trader doesn't know the principles that I'm going to share in this video, guess what happens? The cycle repeats. They go back into that state of pride and self-exaggeration, and then they start projecting low quality setups into the market, and they start taking loss after loss after loss, and they go back into that bust cycle. And ladies and gentlemen, this is what we call the boom and bust cycle. It's not only in trading, it can happen in all areas of your life. And, you can also do some research into, I've talked about on this channel before, what is referred to as the self-licensing effect. That feeling you give yourself, or you have, when you followed your training plan, your health and fitness plan for the week, and then because you've done that, you then justify a behavior that's not very healthy, like being able to eat ice cream or drinking alcohol on the weekend. So you go into this state of pride, self-exaggeration, and then you then minimize the risks, and you then allow behaviors that go counter to what you wanted to do. Okay? I'm not saying you shouldn't drink or eat unhealthy food, but you want to stick to your process. You want to stick to your protocol and regime that you've planned. But the whole point here is that when you get into this state of pride as a trader, you then have what is referred to as the self-licensing effect, and then you give yourself permission to take crappy setups. Okay, so that is the boom and bust cycle explained. It's the human psychology explained. Pride, shame, spiraling is also maybe a component of that. So the traders who go from this here to this here, listen very carefully, this is the key to breaking out the boom and bust cycle. Traders go from here to here, know how to manage their psychology. They know how to manage their pride and self-exaggeration after they win, and they know how to manage their shame and self-minimization after they lose, so that they don't go through the boom and bust cycle. After every trade, they go back to their trading plan and they approximate their edge over a larger sample space. The boom and bust cycle here is outcome-based thinking. Consistent profitability is process-based thinking. Okay, hope that makes sense. Now, how can you break out the boom and bust cycle? It's actually not that difficult. I don't want to frame it as something that's very difficult to do, because it's not. Many traders, many of my students, many of my clients have done it. It's just about having a process, having a trading plan, and then having mindset tools about to manage your psychology so that you can stick to your process and you can approximate your edge as a trader. So I don't want to promote this idea that it's difficult or that it's impossible or that only a certain few amount of traders can do it, because I don't think that's the case. I think if you have adherence to the high priority actions that lead to you breaking out the boom and bust cycle, you're going to be able to do it. So part 3 is all about breaking out. So there's a few action steps that I want you to implement in order to break out the boom and bust cycle. The first one is ensuring that you have, and you guessed it, a profitable edge that has been put into a mechanical trading plan. Why? Well, the more you don't have a trading plan, let's imagine you don't have a trading plan and you just come to the market and you trade based on how you feel, you're going to be more run by your emotions, your pride and shame. You're going to be run by the market. Okay? Whereas if you have a strict trading plan that you need to adhere to, then you know exactly what to do when you're trading. So you're more likely then to take trades that are part of your trading plan and part of your edge that allow you to approximate your edge, rather than just taking trades based on how you feel, either low quality setups because you're in a state of pride, self-exaggeration, minimizing the risk in the market. So you learn to stick to your edge, build consistent profitability, as opposed to being run by your emotions and just taking trades based on how you feel in that moment. So it's impossible to break out the boom and bust cycle unless you have an edge that's proven and that you've put into a mechanical trading plan. Because in order to have consistent profitability, you need to consistently execute on a trading edge. Now, the second part here is more psychological. As a trader, before every single trade you take, your pride and your shame are highly correlated, and let's draw this out here. So if you're a trader, and this is, let's say, after trade, and this is before the trade, in psychology, there is something called the anchoring effect. I'll try my best to draw an anchor. And I don't know. And as a trader, if you have an idea or an expectation of what you think the outcome of a trade is going to be, you think in your mind the expectation here is that your dollar is going to make me 3R on this trade. And if the market exceeds that expectation, you're going to be happy and positive. And if that, and you're going to go into a state of pride. So if it meets that expectation or exceeds that expectation, you're going to have that state of pride and self-exaggeration. Whereas if it doesn't meet that expectation, you're going to have that state of shame and self-minimization. So your pride and your shame after a position are very highly correlated to your expectation before a position. So if you have strong expectations on what you think the outcome of the trade is going to be, if the market provides that or exceeds that, you're going to be going into that set of pride. If the trade or the market doesn't align to your expectations, you're going to beat yourself up and go into this state of shame. This is all outcome-based thinking. So a big way to transcend the pride and shame after the trade is to get rid of the expectation or the anchor before the trade and go from outcome-based thinking to process-based thinking. And the way you do this is by identifying in your mind prior to the trade, what are you expecting the market to give you in that moment? What do you think the market's going to do? And writing down all those expectations on the outcome. Now, as you all very well know by this point, nobody has any idea of what's going to happen next in the market. There are just so many factors playing on the market's price. So to have an expectation of what you think the outcome of that individual trade is going to be is unrealistic. It's impossible to predict. So you need to identify all the expectations you have on the outcome of that individual trade. How much do you think it's going to make you? Maybe you think it's going to make you 4K or 4R, or it's going to get you that another funded account, or it's going to help you pay bills or pay rent. Okay? So there's expectations before a trade, and you need to identify all of those. And by the way, I know we're not explicitly talking about it in today's video, but whenever you create the expectation on the outcome, this is what we refer to as a fantasy, because you created it in your mind, an all positive fantasy. The moment you do that, guess what? You birth fear and anxiety in your mind, because now you fear and have anxiety over missing out on these positive expectations. And you fear losing those positive expectations. I was just working with one of my students in the 12-week program on this exact issue. So when you create those fantasies and expectations on what you think the outcome of that individual trade is going to be, you create a positive idea in your mind, and simultaneously you birth the fear of now missing out on that. So all of a sudden you've introduced fear and greed into your trading. Fear and anxiety and fantasies into your trading. That's not a way to stick to your process or to achieve consistent profitability, break out the boom and bust cycle. Absolutely not. If you get caught in the fear and fantasy trap, guess what's going to happen as a trader? You're going to get, this is process, this is breaking out the boom and bust cycle, this is outcome, this is positive outcome, a win, a false win, a win on that individual trade. True winning is sticking to your trading plan, your process, winning over the larger sample space. And this is negative, this is loss, this is anxiety, this is fantasy. The more you create fantasies and you try and seek after the fantasy of that positive false win on that individual trade, the more you're going to have fear and anxiety in your trading. And the more you're going to be caught into outcome-based thinking. And what's going to happen is you're going to oscillate as a trader. Boom, bust, boom, bust, boom, bust. Whereas if you transcend outcome-based thinking by managing your expectations, you got a process-based thinking, you transcend the boom bust cycle. So you need to identify all your expectations before the trade, and you need to ground these expectations. This is all before the trade. Okay? And you need to remind yourself that, Pat, nobody, especially you, has any idea of what's going to happen next in the market. For you to try and predict what's going to happen next in the market is a self-exaggerated ego trip where you're completely delusional, because you can't predict the outcome of the next individual trade. What you can do very simply is see, does this trade and does the market align with your trading plan or not? If it does, you take the trade, but if it doesn't, don't be taking the trade based on what you think the outcome is going to be. That's unrealistic, that's foolish, that's not the way to make money over a long period of time. It's the perfect way to keep yourself stuck in the boom and bust cycle. So you need to ground those expectations, okay? And by the way, this process is outlined in my free Bulletproof Your Mindset tool. I'll put that in the link in the description so you can download that. You can use it before every trade. If you do that, you're going to take yourself a very long way through the process of escaping the boom and bust cycle. Okay, it's a completely free tool. Now, the other thing that you want to get very, very good at is this. Now, to set realistic expectations, if you take a win in the market, chances are initially you're going to puff yourself into that state of pride. Okay? And if you take a loss in the market, chances are you're going to beat yourself up a little bit into that state of shame. That's most likely unless you're, a very experienced trader that just really has a thick skin through years of being beaten up by the market. You're probably not going to be able to escape that dynamic of just feeling completely nothing after you win and lose. Okay? Or if you do a lot of mindset work or do a little work through my 12-week program, you might be able to get yourself into that state a lot quicker. So chances are initially you will go into that state of pride and state of shame. However, the difference between a trader who's stuck in the boom and bust cycle and one who escapes from the boom and bust cycle, the one who gets stuck in the boom and bust cycle does nothing about it. They buy into that state of pride, they run their story about how good they are, and they exaggerate how good they are, and then they're requiring humbling from the external world, the market, to humble them to get them back. And the traders who run their story about how bad they are in that state of shame, they then require lifting from the market to get them back to that state of balance. So those are traders who are stuck in the boom and bust cycle, and this takes a long period of time to do. Whereas the traders who build consistent profitability and have less oscillation, have more of this one step back, two step forward type oscillation, are the traders who, when they initially get puffed up into that state of pride, then very quickly self-humble themselves. They ground themselves so they're not requiring external humbling from the market. Okay? So the third thing you can do after you have your trading plan, after you manage your expectations before the trade, the third thing you can do is get very good at when you get up in that state of pride, you feel that initial state of pride, you remind yourself of all the things you've overlooked, all the risks, all the drawbacks, and you really just humble yourself. Not to go into a state of shame, but just to get yourself back to that state of equilibrium. Because at this state of equilibrium, you're most process-based and you're most present with the market. So when you take a win, you have to get really good at grounding yourself back to that state of equilibrium. And when you take a loss, you have to get really good at bringing yourself back up and reminding yourself you're not all that bad after all. Okay? And when you get proud, you have to learn how to remind yourself of your faults and your drawbacks. When you get shame, you have to get good at reminding yourself of your benefits and all your accomplishments. Not as a way to swing the other way to pride or from pride to shame, but to get yourself back to that state of balance and equilibrium where you're sticking to your trading plan, your processes, and you're present with the market. You're seeing the market for what it is. You're not exaggerating the risk in the market because you're shamed. You're not minimizing the risk in the market because you're proud, but you're just seeing the market for what it is. And if the market aligns with your trading plan, you execute. So the third thing you need to do to break out the boom and bust cycle is learn to self-manage. Okay? It's very, very important. Now, let's put all this together. As a trader, if you don't have a trading plan, if you're setting wild expectations before you trade, you're going to be highly emotional after, and you don't manage yourself, you're going to go through these manic swings of doing very, very well and then doing very, very poorly, very, very well, very, very poorly. It's not a way to trade sustainably. It's how you get stuck in the boom and bust cycle. Whereas if you have a trading plan, an edge that you're certain in, put into a mechanical system, and you manage all your expectations before you trade so that you're not highly emotional after you trade, and then if you do go into that state of pride or shame after, you self-equilibrate and you bring yourself back to sticking to your trading plan, you're going to see more of this path, more of this journey, building consistent profitability. Okay? Implement the tools I've shared in this video. If you found it useful, share it with your trading communities. And if you haven't already, make sure you do that trading psychology archetype quiz. It's going to show you exactly what trading mindset you have and show you exactly what you have to do to get consistently profitable. Okay? Thank you for watching to the end, and I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow.